memory-bound predecessors. The goal for training one's memory was not to become a living book, but rather a living concordance, a walking index of everything one had read and all the information one had acquired. It was about more than merely possessing an internal library of facts, quotes, and ideas. It was about building a generalization scheme for accessing them. Consider, for example, Peter of Ravenna, a leading 15th century Italian jurist. Also, one gets the impression one of the 15th century's leading self-promoters, who authored one of the era's most successful books on memory training, titled Phonics. It was translated into several languages and reprinted all across Europe. It was just the most famous of a handful of memory treatises called from the 13th century onward that helped make memory techniques that had long been the exclusive purview of scholars and monks available to a wide audience of doctors, lawyers, tradesmen, and everyday folks who just wanted to remember stuff. One finds books from the period on every variety of mnemonic subject, including how to use the heart memory in gambling, how to use it to keep track of debt, how to memorize the contents of ships, how to remember the names of acquaintances, and how to memorize playing cards. Peter, for his part, bragged of having memorized 20,000 legal points, 1,000 texts by Ovid, 200 of Cicero's speeches and sayings, 300 sayings of philosophers, 7,000 texts of scripture, as well as a host of other classical works. For leisure, he would reread books cached away in his many memory palaces. When I left my country to visit a pilgrim, the city of Italy, I can truly say I carried everything I owned with me. He wrote, to store all those images, Peter started with 100,000 Lucy, but he was always picking up new memory palaces. On his travels across Europe, he constructed a mental library of sources and quotations on every important subject, classified alphabetically. He boasts, for example, that filed away in his brain under the letter A were sources on the subject of de alimentis, de enation, de absentia, de arbitritis, de ab electibus, et de similibus, elation, de absentia, de arbitritis, de ab electionibus, et de similibus, creatur nostrum hab entra inspelibus in iceta litera, about provisions, about foreign relation, property, about absence, about judges, about appeals, and about similar matters in our law, which begin with the letter A. Each piece of knowledge was assigned a specific address when he would wish to expound on a given topic. He simply reached into the proper chamber of the proper memory palace and pulled out the proper source. When the point of reading is as it was for Peter of Ravenna, remember, you approach a text very differently than most of us do today. Now we put a premium on reading quickly and widely, and that reads a kind of superficiality in our reading, and in what we seek to get out of books. You can't read a page a minute. The rate at which you're probably reading this book and expect to read what you've read for any considerable length of time. If something is going to be made memorable, it has to be dwelled upon, repeated. In his essay, The First Step Toward a History of Reading, Robert Darnton describes a switch from intensive to extensive. Reading that occurred as books began to proliferate. Until relatively recently, people read intensively, says Darnton. They had only a few books, the Bible and Almanac, and a devotional work or two, and they read them over and over again, usually aloud and in groups, so that a narrow rate of traditional literature became deeply impressed on their consciousness. But after the printing press appeared in 1440, things began gradually to change. In the first century, after Gutenberg, the number of books in existence increased 14-fold. It became possible for the first time for people without great wealth to have a small library in their own homes, and a trove of easily consultable external memories close at hand. Today we read extensively, without much in the way of sustained focus, and with weird exceptions. We read each book only once. We value quantity of reading over quality of reading. We have no choice if we want to keep up with this broader culture. Even in the most highly specialized fields, it can be They fish fin, dash to try to stay on top of every growing mountain of words. Loose up on the world each day. Feeble